back at the Franschhoek Literary Festival, and News24 kicked off this year's festival with a breakfast discussion, a breakfast debate between political analysts Tony Leon, of course the former leader of the DA, as well as Oscar van Heerden from the University of Johannesburg, Juanita Hunter, the political journalist, and myself. We participated in the discussion, really focused on the election. That's just a few days ahead, and really trying to look into what the election result may be and what it may mean. Will the ANC go under 50%? What could potential coalitions look like? Will Ramaphosa survive if the ANC goes below the 50% threshold? We also obviously touched on the national health insurance that was signed into law this week by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Quite a heated debate about the pros and cons. Tony Leon arguing very strongly that there wasn't enough consultation and that the input of the medical aides and of medical professionals were completely disregarded by the government and by Ramaphosa when he signed this bill. Oscar van Heerden came out in defense of the bill and of President Ramaphosa, saying that this was necessary, that this was something long in the waiting, but also admitting that it will be at least 5 to 10 years before the NHI could be implemented. Both van Heerden, Hunter and Tony Leon, of course, News24 columnists, so you can continue reading their opinions on News24.
So my book is The Child. It is the story of a queer couple who return home to South Africa after living in New York with the goal of starting a family and adopting a child, and the journey that follows that with the adoption process and trying to confront his own childhood and developing relationships with children around him and seeing how he can be a better parent to the next generation. It was a really tough panel. There were some really interesting questions. I found it really interesting to try and imagine a world in which South Africa moves beyond the sort of toxic masculinity and toxic patriarchy that we've inherited. I think from my book I was trying to show some of the ways that the protagonist grapples with his own upbringing and how the way that he was parented influences the way that he's going to parent the next generation. And I think there was a lot of really interesting discussion around intergenerational trauma and how it perpetuates itself down the generations.
You know, it's always nice to be in a place where books are leading the parade. But also the nice thing is to meet so many people in the same business of entertainment and of writing and discussing, especially with a few more days between the next general election. I think that's also had quite an effect on most people here. You know, in the 60s and the 70s, censorship was a weapon of mass destruction in South Africa. And of course, my plays reflected things that people didn't want to see on stage. Political realities, sexual gay people, you know, all the things that one has to explain nowadays when people say, really, you mean you couldn't talk about it, and I think it's very difficult and very dangerous for me to say to anybody out there, it's an easy journey. I mean, I might make it sound like an easy journey now. I think humor is a very important part of survival, not because it's funny, but because it's frightening. But laugh at your fear and make that fear less fearful. And that really helped me throughout all those, I suppose, those minefields of communication.